All right. Well, welcome everybody to week 4, I believe we're at now, Doug, with unSkript here. Again, we're doing our unSkript is doing these weekly demo days, is what we call them. And the intent of these weekly demo days is just to help people understand more and more about how SREs can really just limit or in some way, shape, or form be able to reduce the overall busy work that they have to do in their day. And specifically when it comes to after they get an alert, what do they do next? That's kind of the focus of where our world is at this point in time in the world of site reliability engineering and DevOps. And so today, last couple of weeks, we've kind of done some different use cases where people have told us is interesting at this point to kind of dig into a bit more and how you can use things like RunBooks and whatnot to be able to help with that reduction of busy work. And so today, Doug is going to dig in a bit more to this idea of workflows. So one of the bigger challenges that we're hearing from customers and prospects that we're working with out in the field is they would like to better be able to visually represent the workflow that they would like to take after an alert has been fired in some kind of mission critical system, production system, what have you. And so they would like to be able to take it from alert to finished documentation done, everything, and figure out how to stitch individual kind of processes together in that workflow in some kind of automated way. And so that is really the idea behind workflows, is breaking down a larger process into smaller chunked up processes and then kind of visually stitching them together so that you can just make that much more simple, much more automated, ultimately, again, cutting out some of the busy work that's in that larger process. So Doug's going to share a bit more about how to use this concept of workflows within unSkript and give us a little bit of a demonstration of the product as well. So with that, again, I will turn it back over to Doug.
Thanks, Rob. All right, so here we are. We're going to talk a little bit about workflows, and this is a new feature to unSkript. It's not actually in the free trial yet, so this will be generally available soon, but we just kind of want to give everybody who's here in our weekly live stream a sneak peek as to what's going on. And so I'm just going to let's see here. This is a screenshot of the demo I'm going to do here. But the idea here is we had in the past have only had runbooks, and a runbook is built up of stepwise actions is what we call them. And these actions there are hundreds of them already in the unSkript tooling, and you can drag them in and create a runbook. But sometimes you need to have a little bit more flexibility inside your workflow. And so in this case, what we have here is the ability to, something's happened, we can enrich the data that we need, that we've got some data, we need to get more information. I think last week we were doing a Kubernetes runbook where the first 5 or 6 steps were all like, let's just get the data we need so that we can fix it. So this is like, let's get the data we need. And then we have 3 different remediation choices here. And so when this workflow runs, you'll get the results from hey, did we find big files? And then our option is like, well, we can delete them, we can copy them to S3, or we can archive them. And each one of these is a runbook. So you could have 4 or 5 different runbooks as opposed to just an action. Now you can actually run an entire runbook here as part of your remediation. And then the next step we have after we enrich, we get the information we need, we do the remediation, and then we have validation. Like, let's make sure that we've solved the problem. In this case, we're going to validate that we've deleted the big files on the disk. And if it works, we'll close the JIRA ticket that was opened when this was discovered. And if it failed, we're going to let you know. And so we're going to walk through this workflow here.
Hey, Doug, just to jump in real quick, one of the ways that I like to think of this enrich concept, just for those that are kind of thinking about, well, what does enrich really mean? I like to think of it as diagnostics almost. So that first step could be, instead of enrich, it could be termed diagnosis. So what do I need automatically kind of brought to me or automatically done for me to help really find why the problem is in existence, not so
Right.
much what the problem is, because the alerting system has given us that, our observability platform probably has already given us what the problem is. Now we're trying to figure out why it's a problem, and I think of that as diagnosis in that first step.
Absolutely. The guy who came to look at my washing machine today was doing the enriching. I called in and said, it's making a noise that it shouldn't be, and it's not draining out water. And so he came and said, today I found out that washing machines have clutches. Who knew? My washing machine doesn't have a working clutch, but that was the enrichment stage, right?
Exactly.
So the remediation stage is going to be Friday between 1 and 6 p.m. And validation will be the pile of laundry that is growing next to our washing machine, right? I've got 4 kids. Like, this is a big pile of laundry. And hopefully we will have a successful validation at the end, because like clean clothes are a nice thing to have. All right. But
absolutely,
clearly we can't do that with a washing machine. So let's go through this more of a cloud-based thing. So we can move PowerPoint away. And so this is the workflow. And so to go back to what a runbook looks like, this is a common runbook, and this runbook just has one step. And the workflow that I'm going to show you here is to find big files and then remove them. But if I want to run this runbook again, I need another runbook that's going to make a big file in my EC2 instance, right? So this is a runbook that says, hey, let's check out this EC2 instance and let's put some really big files there, right? To trip the alarm. But this is a runbook. And so each one of these steps is a discrete bit of Python code, right?
Each one of those steps, Doug, would be considered an action in the world of unSkript, right? So absolutely. An action, a series of actions. An action is a very specific execution of something. A series of actions makes up a runbook, and a series of runbooks makes up what we're now going to show as the workflow.
As a workflow, that's correct. Yep. All right. So this is one where it's just doing an SSH into that EC2 instance, and the host is this IP, and the IP is an input parameter, right? 52, whatever the URL the IP is. All right. So let's look at this workflow. And this again is you can see it says beta up here. It's really beta. It's not, we're going to have it in our free trial soon. I'm not sure exactly what soon is, but it will be soon. And so what we can do is we can test this. I was going to run it via the API, but it turns out that we actually have it running in the tool now. So I can hit test here, and it's going to say, we're going to look in the home folder of this EC2 instance, and it's going to look for files that are over 100 megabytes. This is how we're going to connect, the connectivity we're going to use, which credentials we should use. We're going to use our global credentials, which is a specific set of credentials that are configured to our AWS. The cool thing about having different environments is you could have an environment with all of your test credentials, and then you could have an environment with all your production credentials, and you could run this same workflow in both sets, in both environments without any change to the code. It would just change the credentials and say, well, I'm going to look at this instance in dev, or I'm going to look at this instance in production. And you would just have to put the right instance and which environment to go into, and then you could go. In this theoretical sense, an alarm was sounded, a Jira ticket was open. So this is the Jira ticket, so that if this workflow does resolve it, we can close the ticket. If we choose to do the remediation of copy the files off of the EC2 instance S3, we can give it an S3 bucket. We're doing all of this in US West 2. All right, so now we can test the workflow. And it takes about 2 or 3 seconds just for it to all get kicked off, but we'll see here that it'll start, say, processing here. And what that means, it is running this this one runbook called Find Big Files More Than Threshold. And so what that is doing is it's, again, SSHing probably into that same EC2 instance, saying, hey, any files that are too big. Now, this is still a very early version of the product, and it doesn't actually, it says, please select one of the steps, and the clicking doesn't work yet. But what we also have integrated into this is a Slack integration. And so you can see I started this off at 1:15. This triage workflow started. The full disk troubleshooting started. And you can see it started a thread inside Slack. And so it started. If we click this, this will actually give us the execution detail that will load up this page. And this is the first step. The first step is find the big files more than their threshold. If we click that, it's actually going to open up the execution details of this first run book right here. And so you can actually go through and look at all of the steps. What I'm going to look at here is the inputs, right here, the instance, here's the threshold, right? The configuration of what we were looking for using the credentials we used, the files count, the folder to look at, and the region, and then the output. And it found a couple files. It found the video file, and it found one that I just typed in gibberish on my phone, on my keyboard, right? So I showed you how I was generating these files. It says, here's the IP address. We've got a couple big files, so we need to remediate those. All right, coming back over here. So it's saying select one of the steps to continue. And you can see that we actually have this built into a Slack bot. And so being able to click here and remediating it and walking through all the steps by clicking here is coming soon. Right now, we can choose whether we want to delete the files, copy to S3, or archive the files. So let's just delete them. So if I choose this, it says, well, we're not going to do those. And you can see over here, it's already decided to run the in progress. It's in progress with deleting the files. So clicking the button here in Slack sent a message back to unSkript saying, all right, we're going to delete the files. The workflow says, cool, let's do that, and starts deleting the files. That has now succeeded. You can see that stuff is happening here. And so now it's going in, the remediation is finishing up, and it's going to pop over here to validation. So now we're running that validation script, which is probably the same script that we had over here, right? We were looking for big files, we deleted them. Now we're looking for big files again. And it should say that it is done. It did say that it finished, and the UI just hasn't caught up. But you can see it looks like it was successful because we're closing the Jira ticket. So we can look at the validate big files not on the disk. We can look at those execution details. And we can see that the inputs, again, as we're looking at that same instance, and the outputs are showing that there were no files above that threshold. So it passed. And because it passed, it could move on to closing the Jira ticket and closing up the issue. So this is one of these ideas where this might be something that happens fairly regularly. There are a lot of tools where you do something and it creates a whole bunch of log files or something, and maybe those need to get deleted after a certain amount of time. So you could just have a workflow set up that says, hey, we found the big files. Do you want to copy them? And maybe you do need to copy them for a short period of time. Or do you want to, you could have this workflow, you get the alarm, and now we can automate some of the steps to get that out of your hair and solve the alarm, close the ticket, and you can move on with your day.
Yeah, so just a couple of things that I'll add to the mix here is, I think that there are a number of people that we've talked to in the past, let's say, that would look at this and say, well, I can do all of this, with the automations I've built via Python or Terraform or what other, any other type of, language they want to use to be able to build automations within their environments. And so totally fine. There are some people that just love doing it that way, and that's totally great for them. What I like about this personally, and what I've heard a couple of people say about this that we've talked to early on about this is, number one, this concept is really nice and simple and easy for those folks that don't understand, in-depth Python or other scripting languages to be able to do that work and actually create automated scripts and deploy them in some capacity to finish some kind of work like this in an automated way. The second thing is, even if you do have, these scripts kind of laying around, what if somebody else wants to use them? Like, where are you storing them? Do you have a centralized storage place for all these scripts? And then how do you update them? And somebody goes in and updates one, does it automatically update for everybody, or is everybody storing it on their local machines? Or so there's some confusion there sometimes in companies, especially in bigger firms,
Hmm.
about who's maintaining what over time. And then the other thing I like about this is just that it's all integrated back into Slack as well in this case. So we're not necessarily taking people outside of the place where they're working every day. People that are in the SRE or DevOps mode all day long, the last thing they want to do is go to another system to check for what's happening, or take a next step or a next action. And so being able to kind of bring the information to them in a place where they're familiar working and allow them to take those next steps without then having to go back into some other interface,
Hmm.
just ultimately makes their workload lessen at the end of the day, and then just makes it simpler for them to be able to get through some of these types of issues that are just kind of, again, that busy work that just kind of takes up their day that they don't need to be taken up anymore. So just a
Hmm.
couple things I'd like to add there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else that we wanted to show today, or is that kind of the crux
I
of it
think
for today?
that's it for today. We'll have this video up for everyone else to watch in, a day or two. We'd love feedback on this too. If this is still an early version of the product. So we're really excited to be able to bring this to our customers and see what other people decide to build with it.
All right, that sounds good. All right, so folks, thanks again for joining. And again, as Doug said, we'll post this video for people to check out and share with others the next 24 hours or so here. And again, any feedback you have to help us continue to enable this product to get better and better over time, we're certainly up for. So thank you very much for joining, and we'll talk to you all soon.